The Wonder Boy series hit the apex of its unorthodox evolution with the Dragon's Trap in 1989. The game continues on from the ending of Wonder Boy in Monsterland and sees our hero cursed after defeating the Mecha Dragon. Now a lizard man, Wonder Boy must free himself of the curse once and for all. Like Zelda 2, Wonder Boy is a side-scrolling action RPG where players search for the treasure, power-ups and dungeons needed to progress. As Wonder Boy defeats each dragon, he is bestowed with a new form which grants him access to new areas through abilities such as Mouseman's wall climbing or Hawkman's flying. Form changing gives openness to Wonder Boy's compact world, rewarding exploration, such as the Zelda influence on its world design. The 1989 Master System original is still great, but the 2017 remake by Lizard Cube is excellent. Whereas many studios simply abandon their old franchises or make half-hearted attempts to modernise them, Namco have continued to respect their classics while keeping with modern trends. Mr. Driller is a puzzle game starring Suzumu, a digger whose parents starred in the arcade games Baraduke and Dig Dug. This parental origin suits the theme of subterranean exploration as players drill and match coloured blocks to tunnel their way to the centre of the earth. It's a simple and addictive game made to be played in short bursts as the player races against their depleting oxygen supply. This urgency only enhances the risk and reward of possibly being crushed by the coloured blocks as players must quickly consider the implications of their actions. Mr. Drill is an excellent puzzle game and had it come sooner it would have been a revered arcade classic. Treasures of Karuga takes the conventions of bullet hell shoot-em-ups and makes them accessible while retaining their coveted difficulty and challenge. Its gimmick is simple but innovative. Players switch between alternating colours that absorb enemy bullets of the same type while dealing additional damage to the opposite. If the player lacks confidence in bullet dodging, they need only to change colour. Even when attacks alternate, the player only needs to dodge half of them. Strategy is rewarded on top of pattern recognition and reflexes. Take the colour switching away and there's still a fantastically crafted mix of bullet hell chaos and old school design that makes it challenging on multiple levels as environmental obstacles restrict the player's movement. These multi-layered challenges are where Ikaruga's difficulty is found. Each individual component provides a firm challenge that accumulates as features are brought in. Ikaruga is an excellent showpiece in shmup design and an absolute must-play. The term perfect sequel is rarely associated with games of the late 80s, as many series use their numbered follow-ups to experiment before perfecting the formula with their third entry. Castlevania was no exception, as Part 3 would be considered the true follow-up to the 1986 classic. Dracula's Curse is a prequel that follows what would be the Belmont clan's first battle with Dracula. Its gameplay built on the original has new features such as alternating routes and additional playable characters added variety to the level design and gameplay. Dracula's Curse is by far the strongest NES outing, but it is also the hardest and will push the players to the limits of their patience. It is an essential Castlevania and paved the way for the series to expand into the likes of Wonder with Blood and Symphony of the Night. Its Netflix adaptation only further demonstrates its influence.
Get serious! Round 1.
The Capcom vs SNK rival of the 90s created a golden age of fighting games as each company pushed innovative titles in an attempt to outdo the other. Garo, Mark of the Wolves, was something of a response to Capcom's Street Fighter III Third Strike, sharing many similarities. The roster had changed and consisted almost entirely of newcomers. Fatal Fury's option to fight on different planes was removed and a new battle system was introduced. While Third Strike's parry rewarded pressing forward before being hit, Garo's Just Defend rewarded blocking at the last possible moment. This, alongside the top system, running, and variable supers, made the game a solid alternative to Capcom's efforts. Mark of the Wolves would be an appropriate swan song as SNK fell on hard times in the following years. There has not been a new entry since Mark of the Wolves, giving a sense of closure to the Fatal Fury saga.
Alright.
Released at a time where Japanese RPGs had hit a wall for new innovations and ideas, Xenoblade was a breath of fresh air that showed the genre could still grow and evolve regardless of trends or technical limitations. Its MMO-inspired semi-automatic battle system allows players to feel actively involved while not demanding the skill or dexterity required for action games. The Bionis and Mechonists are magnificent worlds whose scope and environmental diversity make for a wondrous journey full of surprise and discovery. The MMO influence only further enhances the explorative aspects as secret bosses and overleveled monsters bring a feeling of excitement and dread. This unpredictability and sense of discovery gives Xenoblade's gameplay appeal outside the narrative and is among the game's highlights. Xenoblade has quickly become a favourite among RPG fans, and you are doing yourself a disservice if you haven't played it. In 1982, Pac-Man fever was in full swing as the world embraced the delights of the chase. With only one maze to keep players occupied, a demand for more Pac-Man quickly formed. Midway wanted an immediate sequel, but Namco were taking too long. Entered the GCC and their Pac-Man hack, Crazy Otto. Crazy Otto would add new elements to the game, such as multiple maze types and adjusted ghost behaviour. Simple changes which would satisfy the hunger for more Pac-Man. Midway were thrilled when GCC approached them with their prototype. It was exactly what they were looking for. Crazy Otto would be reborn as Ms. Pac-Man and keep the Pac-Man craze going for many years more. Today, Ms. Pac-Man is a mainstay in Namco compilations and exists as an early example of how hacks, mods and fan projects can lead to the creation of new and exciting video games. The light gun has been an essential component of arcades since the 3D gaming boom of the mid-90s saw on-rail shooters become one of the hottest genres on the market. Time Crisis would capitalise on this boom by giving players fast, flashing, accessible shooting action in a time where developers were still getting to grips with the new technology. Quake wouldn't be released for another year. The cover system added a dynamic angle to the game as play no longer boiled down to whether or not you could quick draw the CPU. Cover gave an additional level of control and offered more than a taste of what the medium had the potential to become once fully 3D first-person shooters took off. Today, Time Crisis stands as a classic of its genre. Its sequel would eclipse it, but its impact will forever be felt on the medium. Created by Sonic team, Billy Hatcher would be a departure from Sonic's speedy exploits, instead focusing on exploration and challenges across a myriad of worlds. The mission-based level structure allowed for tighter design focus but would leave players displeased as the game lacked the freedom to do tasks in any order. Billy Hatcher would bring new innovations to the table as a focus on rolling, growing and hatching eggs would make the brunt of the gameplay. Eggs were such a key piece that Billy would become borderline useless without one. It was a novelty at a time where the world had yet to be exposed to the delights of Katamari Damacy. Billy Hatcher would be remembered for its colourful and silly tone and would gain a cult following. That said, don't expect Sega to be in a hurry to port this one to newer systems.
Good morning!
Donkey Kong Jr. would be Mario's first and only appearance as an antagonist. It is an intriguing historical piece existing between Nintendo's transition from toy maker into video game developer and manufacturer. While it may seem vastly different at first glance, Donkey Kong Jr. retained many elements from the original. The primary goal of the platform remained unchanged: climb to the top and rescue your loved one while avoiding obstacles. The big difference in Jr.'s design comes from the vines that the infant gorilla could climb onto either one at a time or simultaneously. Mastery of the vines was essential for completing levels quickly. While not as famous as the original Donkey Kong, Jr. is every bit as good and remains a classic of the video gaming golden age. It is something you should absolutely play if you haven't already. Super Mario 64 confidently brought platformers into the third dimension as its adventurous exploration ushered in the era of the open platformer. With this era came new challenges and a subgenre that would define the generation. Welcome to the Collectathon. Arriving 2 short years after Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie would expand on its design with the fast and menacing Gruntilda's lair making for an impressive hub world. Collecting was amplified as smaller collectibles became a prerequisite for obtaining key items. Larger worlds would push the N64's draw distance to its limits. Banjo-Kazooie impressed visually with textured graphics displaying a level of detail lacking from Mario's flat polygons. Banjo was in many ways superior, offering advancements that built on Mario's foundations. Later collectathons would be too ambitious for their own good, bloating the design to the point of tedium. Banjo-Kazooie remains popular and continues to inspire designers and players alike. Today, independently developed games are widespread in reach and popularity, with hundreds of them being released on a monthly basis. These games are often limited in reach, appealing to niche audiences and selling in small numbers. Every so often a game breaks from this mold, becoming the mega hit many creators can only dream of. Daisuke Amaya's Cave Story would be one of the forerunners in the indie boom, as its hybrid of modern and retro design would perfectly blend into a game that satisfies all who play it. Its origins are easily traced to 80s classics such as Metroid. Players traverse an expansive map that increases in scale as they gain new abilities and overcome bosses. With its respect to the classics combined with advancements from modern design, Cave Story serves as the ideal introduction to the wondrous world of independent video games. The technological limitations of the 2D era often made for simple but solidly designed licensed games that would use their source as inspiration. Of the many Disney games licensed to Capcom, DuckTales would be among their best, and it was all thanks to Scrooge McDuck. What many may see as a greedy old duck, Capcom saw as a novel protagonist whose walking cane and love of treasure gave them all the inspiration they needed to craft a memorable adventure. The poker mechanic was not only funny but also a satisfying method of transportation, as Scrooge could bounce off enemies' heads to explore otherwise out of reach areas. The cane also doubled as a club, allowing Scrooge to strike rubble and projectiles across the screen. The cane was a unique novelty and helped place DuckTales among Capcom's 8-bit finest, an essential NES game. The original PlayStation features one of the deepest libraries to ever grace video games and has been the subject of obsession for many enthusiasts who excavate its library in search of hidden gems. Enter Silent Bomber, one of the best games you've never played. Silent Bomber follows Yuta, a war criminal hired by a military government to take down a rogue space cruiser which threatens to destroy their planet. The action-heavy pacing requires swift movement as the player runs, wall jumps, and air dashes their way through the barrage of enemy fire that is hell-bent on stopping them. Yuta does not fight directly, instead opting for an arsenal of explosive mines he can remote detonate at will. The Bomberman influence is obvious and is a fantastic evolution of the concept. If you are looking to spice up your PlayStation, then I implore you to play Silent Bomber. It is easily among the system's finest. This remake of the original Fire Emblem is often the subject of scorn as its art style and guidance chapter requirements left a bad taste in the mouths of completionists and fans of the GBA trilogy. The gameplay also split opinion as many believed it was perhaps too faithful, causing it to feel aged. Shadow Dragon represents Fire Emblem at its purest, a war game where units weren't just characters but disposable people who, much like in a real military, throw down their lives in the name of a greater cause. Fire Emblem was never originally designed with resetting or maxing out in mind. Permadeath gives weight to decisions and makes choices matter. The game is balanced around those commitments. Intelligent Systems bravely stood by this design regardless of whether or not players agreed with it. If nothing else, Shadow Dragon can be commended for that.